All right. Thank you everybody so much for staying through lunch or staying after lunch. It's wonderful to see you all here, and thank you for the invitation to speak. So first, before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, acknowledge their enduring connections to land, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So I hope at least some of you are familiar with the work that GSWA does. We have been around for almost 140 years. So we are part of DEMIRS, but we predate any of the government departments that we have been a part of over several years. So, and sometimes we feel that, but in any case. All right, so I've got 140 years worth of data that I'm going to take you through today. Get comfortable? No, I'm just kidding. Imagine. What I'm going to do is talk about a few of our high-level flagship projects, and then if there's time, I hope to step through one of our project showcases, which will be in the West Yilgarn. And this really is just an example of some of the routine data sets and knowledge products that we generate on a routine basis. Okay, so really the core function of the GSWA is to understand the geology of the state. And we do this through geological mapping, the collection of geological data sets, which includes things such as geochemistry and geochronology, and of course geophysical data sets that many of you probably use. In addition to being the stewards of the state's geology, which is really where my passion is, we also manage and deliver our own data. We manage data in core that's submitted by industry, which is the materials stored at the GSWA core library. We manage the exploration incentive scheme, which I'll talk a bit more about in this talk. We manage the abandoned mines program. We have a land use planning division, and we've got representatives here today from that group. And we also maintain spatial data, which includes the mineral and petroleum titles. We don't do compliance. We don't do statutory information. We really are the functions that are listed here. So our main objectives are through the use of the collection and interpretation of geological information, we mitigate exploration risk by understanding the state's geological evolution. So that's very near and dear to me. We also provide trusted advice around responsible legislation, policy, and land use issues, and we provide objective science-based evidence around emerging geoscience issues. Now, although we've been around for a very long time, we are hardly an antiquated institution, right? The world is changing now very rapidly, maybe more rapidly than it has before, and we need to be adaptive and responsive to these changing geopolitical drivers. And so just in the last 5 years, we've had the release of the critical mineral strategy, the release of the net zero roadmap, and the national hydrogen strategy. And we very much need to be ready to respond to these issues. And these aren't just state or national issues, these are global issues that we're responding to. And this doesn't change the way or the work that we do, but it does have an effect on the way we think about, the way we prioritize, and the way we present some of our data sets. So coming back to this slide, the core functions that I'm going to be touching on today are the ones here in the box. There are a number of QR codes embedded throughout the talk that can take you to web pages that have more information. This QR code would take you to GeoView, which is our online interactive geological map. It's where a lot of our spatial layers and a lot of our geological data can be accessed. Okay, it's not the only place to get our data, but it's a good one to start with. Okay, so we've got 4 flagship projects that I'm going to briefly talk about today. And in order of presentation, they include WA Array, the Geoscience Data Transformation Project, the Exploration Incentive Scheme, and our participation in the MinEx CRC. And then there's more after that. Okay, so a lot of our work is helping with the transition to a zero carbon economy. And one of the ways that we're doing that is trying to safeguard against competing land uses. And what this means is that we might be required to sterilize large areas of land so that, for example, the next large renewable energy hub is not built on top of the next tier 1 mineral deposit. So these are considerations that we're thinking about. And this map here, I mean, this is a map many of you are probably familiar with, shows mineral occurrences in these little circles. And lo and behold, there are a lot of unexplored areas that are quite challenging to reach. And that is because a lot of these areas are undercover. We know we need to start expanding our exploration space. We also know we need to start looking at deeper levels in the crust, or in the earth, I should say, so that we can really start to better understand the operative mineral systems we have around the state. And so one of the ways we're doing this is through the collection of geophysical data that can really start to look through the lithosphere. So through the crust, through the lithosphere, all the way to the lithosphere-asthenosphere boundary. Okay, so WA Array is a 10-year program to collect passive seismic and magnetotelluric data at 40-kilometer spacing across the state. Okay, so we've got more than 1,500 instrument sites that are divided up into 9 different regions. The first round of data collection was in the Southwest, and that was completed last year. We've just deployed our instruments to the second phase, which is the Eastern Goldfields. And then next year, those sites will roll over to the phase 3 area, which is in the Central East. Okay, now more than 50% of these sites that are shown on the map are not accessible by vehicle. So we do require a lot of helicopter support. So this is quite a logistically challenging program. But when this is complete, it will be one of the highest resolution data sets of this type in the world. So we're very excited. All right, this kind of reiterates what I've said. So the idea is that the seismometers are in the ground collecting data for 1 year. Those instruments are then pulled out, serviced, and then deployed to the next area where they're in the ground for a year. While we are collecting data, the data from the previous deployment, in this case phase 1 in yellow, is being analyzed, processed, and written up into products. So we're currently working on 9 tier 1 products from phase 1, which include cover thickness maps, crustal thickness maps, and even lithosphere thickness maps, and then a myriad of other things. We hope to release the data from phase 1 by December. So this slide is a bit to look at, but it just shows a little bit of the preliminary data that's coming out of the Southwest, which is our phase 1. The map on the right shows the passive seismic network array in the triangles. And then what's also shown in the red line is an active 2D seismic line that we've just acquired. And so the preliminary results, and I'll talk a bit more about this active seismic line towards the end of the talk, but the preliminary results, which are uninterpreted as of now, are shown there. And you can see there's some nice reflectors. We've gotten some good information there. But what I have below that are the preliminary results from the passive seismic array along that active seismic line. It's a bit of a comparison. You can see there's some nice velocity contrast in there. We're getting a very nice crustal structure. In this case, it only goes to a depth of 60 kilometers, but the data goes through the lithosphere. We can see, at least in some of the model, there's a nice definition of the moho at about 40 kilometers. But what's really exciting about this sort of data, and the fact that we have it in an array, is that we can generate 3D volumes of these domains and generate 3D models of the state through the lithosphere. So that's where we're going with this data set. So it'll be an extremely powerful world-class set of data. Okay, you've survived WA Array. I'm moving now into the Geoscience Data Transformation Program. And this is a 5-year program that aims to really transform and modernize the way that we store, manage, and deliver our data. And we recognize that there's an increasing demand for easier access to findable, accessible, interoperable, and reproducible data. And we have a lot of data that needs to be put into this system. Right now, our data lacks connectivity between all of our different data sets, which, as frustrating as it might be for the external users, I can't even tell you. Our data lacks standardization, and in many cases, our legacy data is not even digitized. So to address this issue, we have a 5-year program. We have $10.6 million worth of funding to try to remedy this. So this is I don't expect you to see the details on this diagram, but it's the schematic framework for how we envision this to work. And so what happens on the upper left here is there's a single lodgement framework on the front end for external users such as yourself, where data can be submitted and quickly checked. All of the data, the stuff that's submitted by external users, but as well as our own on the back end, is consolidated, it's cleaned, it's checked, it's stored, and then everything goes into the data lakehouse. I love that name. The data lakehouse, where it is integrated and connected via knowledge graphs. So we're really getting a good sense of how all of our data can talk to each other. And then that allows for data to be searched, queried, smart searches, not only by humans, but also by machines. And then on the final end, there's a discovery portal, or there will be a discovery portal, where all users can access, interrogate, extract all of the data that we have. So it's pretty exciting. We are halfway through this 5-year program, and we are currently working on the knowledge graphs, but we're also dealing with our legacy data sets. So we're scanning, digitizing, and enhancing our historical data, which is a little bit of a job. Over the next year, we hope to really start designing, building, and implementing the key technologies that are going to go into this. So this is a really exciting program. It will allow our data to be interrogated and integrated and used properly, really, I think, for the first time, which is, what the modern age requires. Okay, the third flagship program is the Exploration Incentive Scheme, which has been supporting the resources industry for a number of years now. It operates on an annual budget of $16.5 million. EIS co-funds 3 different programs. The largest and the one that's been around for the longest is the co-funded drilling program. And we've recently added the co-funding geophysics and energy analysis programs. And I will step through each of these. So the co-funded exploration drilling program really is the flagship project of EIS. It's been around for quite a while. It's a competitive program, and I hope most of you are somewhat familiar with this program. It is open for applications twice a year, and the next round will open in August. And what it offers is a 50% refund for innovative exploration drilling projects. And it is capped at specific amounts depending on the application, but it's a great way to get support for your work. Where we benefit from this program is that there's an agreement that all the material that's retrieved, so the core that's retrieved from a diamond drilling program, is then donated to the GSWA core library, where it is available for public access after a confidentiality period. So that's really where the state government benefits from this program. The co-funded geophysics program was just implemented last year, and it's intended to support geophysical exploration in the mineral resources sector. And a high preference will be given to applications that are looking at greenfield regions, so regions with little or no existing data, regional to camp scale projects. So we're probably not going to support prospect scale type work, but we're looking at bigger pictures, and applications related to critical minerals. This round, the applications are reviewed once a year, and this will open in February next year. And the map on the right shows the first round of applications from Venture 1. 23 of 33 applications were successful. Okay, so it's a pretty good success rate. And the techniques are listed there on the table. The next round of applications will be in Venture 2, which is kind of the northwestern part of the state. The following year, it will be Venture 3. And then following on from that, it's going to flip between north of the red line and south of the red line. So that's kind of the application scheme that we have in mind. The co-funded energy analysis program is also quite new, and it's intended to encourage exploration of petroleum and geothermal resources. And there's 2 categories of funding that are available. One is through the analysis and reprocessing of existing material. So for example, say you have some old drill core that you want to reanalyze or that you want to analyze for the first time. That's an option. Or the reanalysis of existing data. So say you've got some old seismic data that you want to be reprocessed, or old MT data, that would classify as part of this program. And then it also supports the acquisition of new geophysics. As with the previous program, we accept applications once a year, and that will open also in February. Okay, so in addition to the co-funded programs, EIS also gives $6.5 million for the acquisition of pre-competitive geoscience data, and this is largely led by GSWA. So a lot of that money goes into the acquisition of new geophysics. So in the last year, we've completed 1,200 kilometers of 2D active seismic in the West Yilgarn. I talked a little bit about that line in the Southwest, but we've also acquired 2 lines in the Midwest. And we are also about to obtain 100-meter line spacing of magnetics in the near year. We also are starting to do a lot of more routine analysis of novel geochronology and isotopes. So what we're really targeting here, and we get a lot of this money from EIS, is the dating of minerals that lock in lower temperatures than our standard uranium lead zircons. So we are now starting to be able to date a range of geological processes such as alteration, mineralization, reworking. It's giving us a way to more fully characterize the timing of very important geological events that we miss with zircon. We're also working on a state-led isotope map, which will help us better understand some crustal evolution and domains. EIS also funds a portion of our geochemistry and nearly all of our petrophysics. So it's quite an important program for us. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about our involvement with the MinEx CRC. So GSWA is a key participant in the National Drilling Initiative through MinEx, which is a nationwide drilling program across multiple case studies around the country, largely led by state surveys, with a focus on looking undercover. And a key component of the NDI is to develop and test the coiled tubing drilling technology and associated downhole sensing. So I don't know if any of you guys have heard of the CT drilling, but it's quite a new type of technology. It has a lot of benefits. It's got a very small footprint, which is kind of shown here, but there's extra vehicles there because this was during a fancy VIP site visit. So a bit promotional there, but it basically has a crew size of about between 2 and 4 people. It is very mobile. The rig itself is very mobile. It's on tracks. It's very small. It can get to places that conventional drill rigs struggle. It uses far less consumables than any conventional drilling. So it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot more environmentally friendly. There is a 500-meter rig that's currently in operation. And 2 weeks ago, we completed a drilling campaign, which I'll talk more about on the nenext slide, in the Eucla, and we drilled to 500.9 meters. So that's the deepest that the CT rig has gone so far. They're also working very hard on developing a 1,000-meter rig, and we do expect that to be ready in the next few years. So there's a lot of exciting potential to this that we're trying to be a part of. Another aspect of this that I'll just say very quickly is that the downhole sensing is really, really exciting. So they're working on a downhole LIBS, which will give you geochemistry. They're working on a downhole geophysics sensor that can get an array of petrophysical properties, and they're working on downhole seismic as well. And then you're also getting data while drilling on the drilling fluid and the drilling parameters. So there's a lot of really cool technology that's associated with this drill rig. In terms of the NDI areas in WA, we have 3 that we're working on. The first is at the Nifty Copper Mine in the Patterson Origin. And what we're trying to do there is use the CT rig to collect samples, a long strike and a cross strike from the deposit to help us characterize the geochemical, the the mineralogical and the petrophysical changes as you get farther from the deposit. And we started that program last September. Had a rig failure. Again, this is prototype technology. There's only 1 rig. It had to be serviced. Then the weather window closed. And the drill rig is expected to arrive there lunchtime today. So to complete the program. So I'm waiting for the message. Our second program, which just completed last week, 2 weeks ago, last week, was in the Eucla Basin. So number 2 down there, and that was intended to really kind of try to understand how to use this novel drilling technology in really challenging drilling conditions of the Eucla Basin. We know this is quite a difficult place to drill, and that hinders exploration. So we've had a successful program there. And then our third program, which is really just in the planning stages, is in the West Arunta, the Aileron province, and there it's probably going to be a combination of diamond drilling and CT drilling, and that's really just to get more geological information in an area that we don't know a lot about. Okay, so the 4 programs I've just talked about really are kind of a top-down strategy, but we also recognize that we want to help from the bottom up. And one of the things that we're doing to do that is we've established the Industry Ready Graduate Program. And what this is intended to do is to feed the resources industry with more highly skilled, data-focused geoscientists with appropriate applied skills. And so the idea is that it's a 2-year program. The first year, we fund and pay the stipends for a student to be at university to complete either a master's or an honors. And then the second year, they are fully embedded within GSWA. They're learning our data sets, they're learning the way we do things, they're learning everything that they can from us, so that they've got great opportunities for knowledge sharing and on-the-job training, so that when they are released back to you, they are industry ready, they're supercharged, super skilled, and data literate, and they know where our data is and how to use it. So if you know anybody that might be interested in this, please look into this a bit further. Okay, do I have time? How much time? Time. Okay, I want to just finish off on another whirlwind, and this is kind of a project showcase from some of our data from the West Yilgarn. Now, this was presented at the Geoscience Update Forum back in March, and we occasionally run these sorts of forums, or workshops really, where we invite external stakeholders to come and hear about some of the work that we're doing. We haven't been great at having these over the last few years, but that is something we're hoping to more routinely do. And whether that might be a particular project area, in this case the West Yilgarn, it might be a commodity. So I invite you to kind of follow us and keep track of that. If anything I say is of interest to you and you want a bit more detail, all of the talks, plus more that I'm going to harvest some material from, are available on YouTube. So this information is out there by the presenters. Okay, so GSWA has been working in the Yilgarn for decades, and there is very good existing coverage of geological mapping and data sets. But we're really starting to focus our work now in the western part of the western part of the West Yilgarn. So we are, one of the key products that we've released in the last few years is a new integrated bedrock geology map of the Southwest that was released in 2021. It has a lot of detail, and a lot of really great work went into that. Some of the results that we're getting from that tell us that the Southwest is older than we thought, and we're also starting to get a handle on the tectonothermal regime of what we call the Corrigan tectonic zone. Here, basically the boundary between the you and me terrain and the Southwest terrain. So we're getting and that's where the mid-crust has been exhumed and is exposed. So we're getting a good sense on the significance of that. We are getting new seismic data. I've mentioned all 3 of those lines. We've started IBG work in the Midwest. We are testing the hypothesis right now that there's a new major crustal boundary in that area. So those of you working in that area, stay tuned. And we're very much in the data collection phase in the narrower terrain. So we're doing some mapping, we're collecting samples for geochemistry, geochronology, and petrography. So it's a very active area. One of the really exciting data sets that's been released in the last year is the Yilgarn Geochemical database. This is the work of Hugh Smithies, for any of those familiar with him. It now contains over 7,000 high-quality analyses that have been classified into a single geochemical classification scheme, which is very detailed. Many of the new samples that have been released are from the West Yilgarn. I do want to say we are still working in the Eastern Goldfields. That is very much an active area for us as well, but I'm focusing on the West. The database also includes up to 2,000 altered rocks that we think we can see through that alteration and properly classify. and then a smattering of results with slightly less confidence. So you're looking at a database, a geochemical database, and these are igneous rocks of near 10,000 high quality geochemical data. And I'm obviously not going into the significance of what this data tells us, but it's a lot. We continue to collect geochronology and isotope data from across the state, but as well as the Yilgarn. And this shows some of the isotope maps that we are routinely updating. You have on the left the whole rock samarium neodymium isotope map, and then on the left the zircon lutetium hafnium map. And really what we're looking for with these data sets is it tells us the age of crustal domains. You can see different breaks in the domains, which might be indicative of major structures. Again, there's a lot of data you can pull out from these sorts of maps. We are also collecting metamorphic pressure temperature data from the Yilgarn. And the data is plotted here on the left. It's plotted as thermobarometric ratios, which are just the metamorphic temperatures over pressures. So that really gives you a snapshot into the thermal regime that those rocks were sitting at. This is one of the most robust metamorphic data sets in the world within a single terrain. This is very painstaking work that I'm quite proud of. What's shown on the right are the metamorphic data points in the circles and a number of modeled geotherms. And we're using this sort of stuff to really help us understand the thermal evolution of the Yilgarn and the thermal drivers for not only metamorphism, but why we see pulses of magmatism throughout the history of the Yilgarn. So we're really starting to understand why these things are happening. Okay, so all of this data that I've just talked about, as well as the geophysics that I didn't really talk about, has allowed us to do a structural reinterpretation of the Southwest. And again, here on the right, we've got the new IBG map, very detailed, and a number of cross-sections, structural cross-sections, diagrammatic cross-sections that go across the structural grain. And these are helping us to kind of better understand the evolution as a series of granite domes and transpressive shear zones as you get closer to the terrain boundary. So what's cool about this is that we can now test some of these models with the acquisition of the 2D seismic line we've just gotten. So this shows the seismic line in black going across the bedrock map. It goes across a number of interesting domains. So we go through the Lewin Inlier into the Perth Basin, across the Darling Fault, into the Southwest terrain, where we've got a series of Proterozoic reworked shear zones. We go across the terrain boundary into the Yilgarn. We go through the Corrigan tectonic zone, which is again this exhumed mid-crust granulite facies rocks, and then back into the more typical granite greenstone terrains at lower grade, lower metamorphic grade, and then into the Proterozoic Albany-Fraser origin. So it really gives us almost an entire snapshot of the Proterozoic, the Archean to Proterozoic evolution of the Yilgarn, or the Southwest. We are just now starting to process this data. We'll be workshopping with a number of people to really start interpreting this data set. Probably people here more qualified than me to try to do this, but we do see a number of cool features within the Perth Basin. We can see a well-defined moho. Yeah, but I'll leave it at that. Yeah, in terms of that. I guess I'll finish there. I just want to reiterate that, you know, all of our data is for you. It's free. Sometimes it's hard to find, but it's there. Also, our geologists are very passionate and very knowledgeable, and they invite people to reach out. Come into the GSWA, have a chat. I mean, you know, we are regional scale, but we would love to share our ideas with anybody that wants to sit down and listen to us. So. Yeah, and the socials are a good way to keep track of what we're up to and what we're releasing. So thank you very much for your time.